This video is on the topic of sorbic acid, not to be confused with ascorbic acid, and possibly no relation whatsoever, although I don't know, it sure does sound like it's related, but for the purposes of this discussion, it should be considered not related at all. Sorbic acid, as you may know, that's a preservative. It comes in various formats, such as potassium sorbate, sodium sorbate, polysorbate 80, none of which am I interested in, because when you look up sorbic acid on Wikipedia, it tells you that sorbic acid is the active form. It does its job, having the acidity of vinegar, or very similar, while the salt of sorbic acid, sorbate of sodium or potassium, is not active, but is much more soluble in water. Sorbic acid doesn't want to dissolve in water very well. But not much sorbic acid is needed. 1% of 1%, minimally speaking, to kill off botulism, yeast, mold, and prevent their growth. It was discovered over 200 years ago, and the botanists named it Sorbus, the genus Sorbus, Sorbus in the Latin, and the common names that it has been come to know as, because it had many names, it goes back centuries, millennia. The Vikings knew about it, the Celts, the Welsh. So it's a tree that's prominent in Europe, in particular England apparently, the more northern area of Europe. And the fruit is poisonous when raw. It's the berry of a tree, the Rowan tree, R-O-W-A-N. Robert Olivier William Albert Nancy Rowan. That's just one of its many names. It can be confused with the genus ash, the ash genus of trees, but it's not an ash tree, it's not at all, it has its own genus. The ash has their genus, and the Rowan tree has its genus, the Sorbus genus. You know, genus as in species, genus, you know. Let's see what else. So the raw fruit has both sorbic acid and parasorbic acid. The sorbic, of course, is what we want. The parasorbic is poisonous. It will damage the kidneys permanently, I believe, from what I read on Wikipedia. So, but you can cook it. And traditionally you can make a marmalade out of it, because it's very bitter, and you have to add sugar to it. But if you cook it, the parasorbic turns into sorbic, and so you just end up with more sorbic acid than you had before when it was raw, and no poisonous parasorbic acid. So that's its origins. Commercially, it is not extracted from the fruit. There's not enough to go around. So it's artificially or synthetically manufactured, such as it is. And the reason why I bring this up is because once I became a vegetarian, fasting on fruits and vegetables at the age of 17, I became so sensitive that I had problems with a lot of things, some of which I've never gotten over, but silver has helped to get me over some of these problems. But I still can get a headache from the taking of a food that has sorbic or polysorbate in it, or sorbate of some salt. And I always misrepresented or misdiagnosed what that meant, the implication. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with it. I have had candida overload for decades, and I think I can pinpoint when it began, at the age of 19. And I won't get into the particulars, but I'll leave it at that. I've had it a long time. But it was a minor thing in the beginning. It's just progressively gotten worse over the years. And so the headaches indicates a Herxheimer reaction. Every time I take let's say, 2 days ago I picked up some processed sliced cheese. It was a cheese product, actually. It wasn't cheese itself. It had milk protein in it, but that was about it. The rest of it was modified food starch and soybean oil, and, it was very little, easy on the cheese and heavy on everything else. But it had sorbic acid in there to preserve it. And you won't find cheese normally having it, but a cheese product, that's different. And they were individually wrapped slices, so they were supposed to stay fresh, in somebody's lunch bag, and not spoil. So the sorbic acid was in there. And I started getting headaches, and this time I think I did a better job of interpreting the headache. I decided that night, when I was getting the headaches several hours after I had eaten them, I decided to go online and research. Is there a natural cause to sorbic acid? And I was very nicely surprised that it's in a fruit, of all things. Yay, my favorite fruit. And it has a history, my God, probably millennia, if not, at the very least centuries, if not millennia, in European culture. So that was a very good indication in terms of safety, because I was always concerned about safety. I thought it was something artificial, and it is, but it has roots. It's not artificial, so I stand corrected. So what was the next thought? So then I researched whether or not you can buy it. First I researched whether or not, the berries are available, and they are. You can buy them, dried Rowan berries, just like you can get dried goji berries, you can also buy dried Rowan berries. And you can even get the marmalade. But it all looked to me very non-efficient. Just give me the crystalline powder. So what if it's artificially made? I don't care. So I found it's very reasonable. And of course you don't need much, right? Somewhere, I think the range of use is somewhere, it depends who you look at. I mean, everybody gives slightly different, but they're all very similar in the same ballpark. So I extrapolated to 1/10 of 1 part per thousand, which is 1% of 1% minimum, which is a little under the minimum that online sources will tell you, but it's very close. And the maximum is 1/2 of 1%. So, somewhere in that range to use it. Well, I'm sure anything slightly less than that is still very useful, even though it may not be blessed by the good housekeeping seal of the FDA, for the purposes of commercial sales. So, it could still be good. Especially if I'm getting Herxheimer reactions, then I would want to reduce the dosage and ease my way into increasing the dosage, right? If I care to increase the dosage. So I ordered 100 grams for a mere $5.17 plus $6 shipping. Hey, that's not bad. I'm waiting for delivery. I've got a kitchen scale, a 500-gram kitchen scale that's sensitive to a tenth of a gram, and that's what I'm going to measure out into a 2-ounce bottle, eyedropper bottle, and put in the balance with distilled water. Shake it up. I'm going to do homeopathic dilutions of 3 bottles total. So that'll be bottle number 1. The next bottle will be 1 drop plus 2 ounces of distilled water in the second bottle, and so on to the third, so that when I take a drop from the third bottle, it'll be 1 part per trillion. It'll be equivalent to the 4th bottle, or greater, depending on the mass of food that I'm using, drip it onto. Or I may just put it under my tongue before I eat a meal. I want it with food, because the idea is I want all my meals to be preservative-laced with preservative. So then when it goes through my gut, it'll be less prone to degradation, especially the starches and sugars. That's what I'm mostly concerned about. Protein too. Yeah, I'm not worried about the oils going rancid because they're pretty stable. But protein, but most importantly sugar and starch, they can degrade very readily, and so that's what I'm concerned about. Now, I've already been getting good results besides the headaches. Not so good. I have less gas. Yay. Acidophilus never did that for me. Yay. Silver. Even eating silver did not do that for me. So silver may be good for regeneration, but it's not doing enough good. Fungus and yeast is the hardest microorganism to deal with. And I learned that from studying olive leaf. Olive leaf will kill just about every pathogen known to man, including yeast and fungus, but you got to raise the dosage. And olive leaf, I prefer to use the powder, the herbal ground powder. It's very bitter. I got rid of hepatitis B, I think it was, or was it C? I think it was B. I was tested positive, a blood test for hepatitis B, and I got rid of it just using olive leaf on my food every meal, which was 2 meals a day, for 4 days, until I couldn't stand the flavor anymore. Went back the following week, had another blood test, and I was negative. I was free of hepatitis B. So I know the efficacy of olive leaf. It's just not something I normally use. But I have it. I keep it on hand. It's probably old by now. I rarely use it anymore. Because in order to get rid of fungus or yeast overgrowth, you have to step up the dosage of olive leaf to ridiculous amounts, and I just can't do that. So I gave up. And now sorbic acid looks like the way to go to control this overgrowth of yeast in my body, because I really have it bad. I've had it bad for what? Let's see. If I can take a guess. Or no, I mean do the math. 40 years? 40 years. I've had candida overgrowth for 40 years, progressively getting worse. So I can't eat too many apricot pits because I'll poison myself because I have so much yeast in my system. I'll turn that apricot pit into poison before it even reaches any cancer that might be in my body, so it's useless. Yet in moderation I do use it, but extreme moderation, and only occasionally. So the use of apricot pits is not a solution, because I need a predicate to come prior to the use of apricot pits before I even think about using them. And I've never known what to do about it. What do I do? So this might be the answer. And it's beautiful. God gave it to us in a fruit of all things. How can you get any better than that? It promotes the idea, or it discourages the idea of raw food, because you have to cook the berry to be able to use it. Otherwise, you'll end up dead. Eventually. From kidney failure. But still, what a beauty. What a beauty. Ooh, excuse me. Flying insect just got zapped. I don't like, they carry maggots and parasites. I like to kill off all flying insects. I do not like to have them around. So that's my video in my new line of experimentation on better health with sorbic acid, of all things, which I have to thank the Dollar Tree store I went to, and I picked up various crappy food, ice cream sandwiches, laced with corn syrup. Yummy though. and a bag of rice, brown rice. I needed brown rice. And sliced cheese. It was jalapeno flavor. Whew, boy, heavy on the jalapeno. Good. I'm sure, the hot peppers are good for me, but I'm not accustomed to eating spicy food. I prefer to take the capsule, cayenne pepper capsule, so I don't have to taste it, with food, so I don't get an upset belly. So that proved to be a very gainful trip into town, as it turns out. So it was well worth it, even though, in more ways than one, I won't get into the particulars, but it was, in more ways than one, it was a very valuable trip, adventure. Definitely an adventure for me, because I got a lot out of it, and that was just one of the things I got out of it, and I'm grateful for the headache. Maybe now I'll get rid of the white coating on my tongue, which sometimes is blackened by silver usage, but so what, still the coating is there. And my halitosis, which of course comes from the colon via a filthy bloodstream. Scraping your tongue ain't gonna help it, Brushing your teeth 3 times a day ain't gonna make it go away. It'll just cosmetically diminish the noticeability, But a coated tongue is very deep-rooted causes. And it's not the colon. The colon is just one extreme example. It's the whole lymphatic system, in my case. I mean, literally, that's how far the yeast has gone. It's literally in my entire lymphatic drainage system. Pretty bad. Pretty bad. That's why I have vitiligo. If you shine an ultraviolet light on my bare skin, on my naked skin, in a darkened room, you'll see all the splotches I have all over my body. Hands, arms, face, penis. I have a spot on my shoulder. It's pretty bad. Vitiligo is when you lose your ability to produce melanin, and in black people it's very noticeable. You'll see them with splotchy faces. Michael Jackson had the problem. That's why he bleached himself, so you wouldn't notice. But that's not an answer. That's just a coping, a management technique, but it doesn't take care of the problem. It just hides the fact that you have a problem. And I say this because when I asked the dermatologist who had to excise, surgically remove, a benign tumor that was growing in the middle of my vitiligo patch on my shoulder, right where the shoulder harness of your car goes over there, makes you wonder. I asked her, what do they know about it? And she said, not too much, but we I don't know if I might have had the intuition that, it might be related to fungus. And she said, yes. But that's all I know. Oh, it was because of the cream. She gave me an ointment, and when I researched the ointment, I discovered it was an antifungal ointment, basically. So that's when I asked her, well, what does it have to do with fungus? And she said, well, that's all we know. We don't know anything else. We don't have a cure for it. The ointment is just supposed to, might help. Might. No guarantee. And the problem with vitiligo is it's a splotch of albinoism, in which you can get skin cancer very readily because there's no protection at all. So you would need 100% sunblock, basically, titanium dioxide or something similar, to protect that area. And of course I never do it, so, as I understand it, PABA, which is added to be complex, that's actually a very innocent form of mild protection. And I can't remember why. Only because I remember it's in sunblock lotions. In fact, some of them advertise that they have no PABA because some people are so sensitive to PABA, they get very strong rash reaction to PABA, whether it's topically applied or internalized, orally ingested. So There are supposedly substitutes for PABA. P-A-B-A. Parabenzoic acid, or whatever it's called. It might be what it is. Yeah, I think that is what it's called. Acronym for. Para-amino benzoic acid, excuse me. The P-A-B-A acronym. So anyway, I think sorbic acid might help, and who knows? If sorbic acid is the short-term solution, and if silver encourages regeneration being the long-term solution, without the immediate problem of yeast getting in the way of the body's attempt to regenerate, then that might be a two-prong approach to the healing of vitiligo, along with, candida overload in general, giving me accelerated aging, which is no fun. Trust me, it's no fun. So I'm hopeful that I will find, once I get past the initial stages of acclimatization to the use of sorbic acid on a regular basis, daily basis, which I am already. I try to include these processed cheese product slices, on a daily basis, at least once a day, if not twice a day. And I live through the headaches and the eye pressure headaches, and because I figured, okay, whatever, I'll get through this. But if I can apply my own dosage with whatever meal I choose to add it to, as a water liquid base, I could add it to anything. I could add it to tea, stir it into tea. Now, it is difficult to dissolve in water, so I don't know. If I use a 10th ounce in 2 ounces, I may not be, or a 10th gram, I may not be able to dissolve that. So I'll have to find the minimum quantity of water to dissolve a 10th gram into, and then start taking homeopathic dilutions of that. Because I have no way of knowing how well it's going to work out. The very first dilution involving dissolving the dry granules into distilled water. I could try heating the water in my crock pot. That might be a good idea. The problem there is that when the water cools, the excess may precipitate back out again, which won't do me any good. Unless I make the very first homeopathic dilution from that right away when the water's piping hot, because it'll be diluted down by a factor of at least 1,000. I can't remember the exact figure, 1 drop per 2 ounces, what it comes to, but it's more than 1,000, something more than 1,000. It might be 10,000 or 6,000. I can't remember how many drops of liquid there are in 2 ounces of liquid. It's some factor above 1,000. So I think 1,000 would be adequate dilution, such that when it cools down, bottle number 2 won't precipitate out any sorbic acid, while the first one will. But I'll still be diluting it further for safety's sake to the 3rd bottle, even though I may not need it. Now, if I go back, once I get accustomed to the use, if I go back to the 1st bottle, then it could be a problem. So I may have to use... I have quart-sized bottles, now that I think of it. Amber-colored glass quart-sized, liter-sized bottles that I was using for a different experiment. Isn't it nice when you get to... You have to be a rat packer, you have to be a research scientist to appreciate rat packing, because if you don't keep your supplies, you will regret it later. If you don't hold on to anything you're not using, or maybe you already use but you don't mind recycling, these things always come in handy. Unless it's, disposable, consumable, and you can only use it once and have to throw it away. That's different, but it's worth recycling your shit. That's my excuse for rat packing. Now, a scholar would rat-pat books. Where did I read that? I gotta look up the citation. See? So there's always a good excuse for rat packing. Just become a research scientist. Oh, I didn't know my calling when I was a kid until later. I think that's everything. Yeah, it was on the topic of sorbic acid, so I think that covered everything I know to date, which ain't much. But I'm looking forward. I'm being very positive. I'm looking forward to a lot of benefits because I'm already getting some. And of course, yeast and fungus, it took 40 years to get this bad, so it's not going to get good overnight. It's going to take a while. But consistent, persistent use might do a lot of good. That plus my silver usage. And exercise might be awesome. Might be just awesome. I mean, when we think about it, no gas. Can you imagine the amount of toxins I must have been absorbing due to the huge quantity of gas that I've had for several years now? And getting very little value from the food I eat. And so now one of the things is my appetite is huge. Because my body is going, hey, food, instead of, ew, poison. What's the good of eating organic food if 40 or even 30% of it turns to poison? Organic poison, oh great. Oh, what is that Shakespeare line? We are but stuff that worms feed on or something. Oh God. That's only supposed to happen once we're in the grave, not before we're in the grave. So it's a funny thing that I would give thumbs up to a preservative. While I'm on the topic of preservatives, I'll tell you something else. There's I think it's Bird's Eye, I'm not sure, a brand of Thousand Island dressing in which, this was back in the 1980s, I don't know about now. It might still be true. There's something called sodium EDTA. Edward David Thomas Alvin. Sodium EDTA. And it's a chelating agent. Chelating, as in chelating minerals, supplements. And it's put in Thousand Island dressing. Don't ask me why, I don't know why. It's related to vinegar. The A of EDTA stands for acetic acid. So it is related to vinegar, but it's a more complicated version of vinegar. It's not vinegar alone, which, for whatever reason, chemical reason, it becomes a chelating agent. And when I read that on the label and I looked it up, I thought, hey, this Thousand Island dressing is good because it'll help me absorb micronutrients, microminerals that are that might be more prone to difficulty of absorption in the gut. And it made me feel good when I ate it. So maybe it's more than just minerals that it helps you absorb. Maybe amino acids. Who knows, Because I have absorption problems. I've always had it for, not my whole life, but since 1979, when I had a huge inoculation of parasites, drinking the polluted water from the polluted streams of Hawaii for 6 weeks without sterilizing the water, thinking my 100% raw food vegan diet would protect me. It did, from acute illness, but it did not protect me from chronic illness. Although I never got sick, parasites come in two types. There's the flesh-eating parasites, and then there's the parasites that simply feed off the food we eat. And there's probably a third group that does both. In any case, it's not good. And I started to deteriorate right away, and it's been a whole lifelong problem, because now I have to get rid of parasites, not just fungus, and other man-made toxins from our environment. Why did I bring that up? Oh, right, absorption. So sodium EDTA was a pretty cool thing. And so that's one example of something you might think of, oh, no, I don't want that. When in reality, if you bother to research it, you might find out to your surprise it's good for you. Obviously, not everything is like that, okay? But we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking it's all bad either, just because it's man-made. As I now stand corrected on the subject of sorbic acid, so. Now, I don't know about artificially made sorbic acid. I didn't go there. But at least it has natural roots in the berry of the Rowan tree. So, something good to say about it.